Welcome to the Brain Body Fit podcast. I'm Dr. Jerome Rerucha, and I'm here to help you cut through the noise of fads and quick fixes and focus on proven strategies for optimizing your health and peak performance. Join me as we explore regeneration, anti-aging breakthroughs, nutrition, and the power of improving your physical and mental strength to unlock your brain and body's full potential. All right, welcome everybody. Today at Brain Body Fit podcast, we have a very special guest, as they all are, but Dr. Kevin Reichlin. He's a chiropractor. I've been in practice for 25 years. And as we've come to the conclusion, I've probably known Dr. Kevin for that entire time, as he was a very early adopter of laser technology and is a really great chiropractor prior to that. And in this session, we are going to talk about mental health and psilocybin again, and how he has traced his journey with so much experience. And he's going to share some really valuable information that's just going to increase awareness and probably help a lot of people as well who are going to be listening to this. But we also just want to start with kind of a background of how you got here. So Dr. Kevin, welcome.
Thanks, Jerome. It is really good to do this. And
yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, totally. And isn't that one of the best parts of being a chiropractor? We are so relational. We get to have fun. It's not always fun, but so much of my day is fun, right?
It is. And it's also multidimensional, where we're all aware of the triad of health, where it's structural and physical health and well-being, which goes anywhere from adjustments all the way to exercise, and so many great things in between, so many great systems. And then, of course, there's nutrition, which is, lab testing, supplements, healthy eating, of course, and then the mental side of it. So a lot of people think that chiropractors are just pure structure, and even though we're really good at that, and even people have this sometimes a stereotype, but it's based on their experience.
Sure.
But it's just like, well, I don't need to go to a chiropractor. My neck doesn't hurt. My back doesn't hurt. And it's like, well, we're great at that as a whole, but that's really by far not what we do. And the library of chiropractic is so huge, and the mental emotional side of it as well. And I kind of got introduced to the concept of psilocybin. Of course, it was out there, but there was chiropractors, with a very significant neuro background, even in the emotional release world, which are really two totally different subcultures. But you just kept hearing about it. And then from outside sources, as we get into that in time, really hearing some amazing things about it. But I do want to back up, because every chiropractor kind of has a different background. Not everybody can do everything. And that being said, so out of the triad of health, and we'll get into like your extensive practice experience before you kind of started having experiences with psilocybin and more knowledge base of it. So where are you located at? How long have you practiced? And let's just kind of start there.
Sure. So I'm currently located in Boulder, Colorado. I've been here for 20 years, give or take a year or so. Prior to that, I was up in Dover, New Hampshire, and I started there for 20 years, and graduated from Palmer College in 1984. And let's see, what else did you ask me to say?
Well, you come from a chiropractic family, right?
I do. So my dad was a chiropractor and also graduated from Palmer. It was fun. So my dad graduated twice, which is a fun story. So when my dad graduated first in 1951, you could get your chiropractic degree in 18 months. And then somewhere around 1950 or 51, B.J. Palmer decided he wanted to have a 4-year degree. So he did. And my dad said, well, what the heck? So he stayed and got his 4-year degree. It's really sweet. I have both of his diplomas. Yeah. And my dad is no longer here. He passed away several years ago. To me, it's really beautiful. I have in my treatment room, my primary treatment room, I have my diploma and my dad's one of his diplomas. So it really speaks to the heritage that I bring, which, it's interesting. If you study any of the shaman world, many shamans come from a lineage of shamanic practitioners. And so I always felt that gave me a leg up in some ways when I started my chiropractic career, because it was in my blood. And it was almost unfair sometimes. I would talk to my classmates, and some of them were struggling, which happens. And I was just kind of cruising along. Not that it wasn't hard to start. So yeah, so I have that long lineage.
Yeah, and even with you growing up second generation, so much of the talk with Maha right now, and it's great. I love to see it, but people don't realize, especially the ones that think, oh, chiropractors, my neck hurts, my back hurts, like just how in depth and detailed and how far ahead of like everything people say. This is old news to 85% of the chiropractic profession. And so that being said, you just grow up differently. You kind of take it for granted. But on the flip side of it, the amount of experience, and I love seeing this revolution that's necessary, especially the education, the transparency that's coming out, super important. And it'll be great to be able to integrate, as nobody can do everything, but on the flip side, for people to become more aware that there is nobody more experienced in the talk of the Maha movement than chiropractors, naturopaths, acupuncturists. You can start getting into shamans, and there's other professional titles I'm leaving out, but it's like these things have been around longer than I've been alive, and the exact concerns that people are talking about have been talked about longer than I've been alive, seriously. But more important than just being talked about, people have lived by it. So when people have questions about some of the things that's going on today, it's like, well, if you just talk to the people that have lived it their whole life and have been incredibly successful, let alone if they have been helping others in their life. But even when you do come from a generational family of healers as well, it's just a whole different level that you just can't explain to people even from that.
Well, how does any human being speak of, I have that embodied experience, to your point. I was adjusted the day I was born. Adjusted is chiropractic manipulation. And so it's so a part of my DNA, my being, my psyche, all of that. And I like to think that that's partly what makes me successful in this natural healing world, which is, I've known nothing but.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that somebody who didn't come from that can't be an amazing healer too, 100%. And I just have this extra lineage that I bring to the table.
Yeah, which definitely transfers to extra confidence, at least. And so that being said, let's have you give kind of a self-bio a little bit. So we know your dad was a chiropractor. Even in your chiropractic practice, you all kind of set the stage. I know you started out primarily structural, but of course you're very aware of the entire triad. You've gotten into the mental, emotional side. But let's just start with your kind of more traditional practice that you did probably for 30 years and how you really help people. And again, you yourself, you walk the talk. Like, you are very healthy, you're fit. And I'll just let you explain that.
Yeah, so maybe I'll deviate just a little bit from just the chiropractic aspect of it. And I always love to tell this story because it actually informs what I did for the rest of my career. This is a little odd, but I remember being around 10 or 11 years old, and I was walking down a street in my hometown, little farm community, and I saw a mother and a child walking towards me, and it was a mom, and she had a child who had Down syndrome, and she was walking with him. And as God is my witness, I could see his brain. I don't understand this. I didn't understand this as a 10-year-old. But what I saw in his brain, I knew enough that something wasn't right with him. And I saw that his neurons were miscommunicating. I don't know any other way, but it was profound for a 10-year-old. And what I thought to myself as a 10-year-old was, oh, all you need to do is go like that and he'll be okay. I didn't know anything about genetics or whatever. And fast forward to, I have always been fascinated with brains. And then brains became psyche, spiritual, mental, emotional. And so, yes, early on in my career, when you graduate from chiropractic school, all you know is structural. And so, yes, that's what I did with people. I, straightened spines and, worked on subluxations, but always, even through chiropractic school, there was always a background of there's something else, which actually speaks to early chiropractic philosophy, which was that human beings have innate intelligence. And so you can call it whatever you want, but human beings have something innate, built in, inborn, whatever. And what I used to love what BJ Palmer said, which was, if you take two chiropractors using the same technique on the same patient, how come one will get better results? The one who gets better results connects to the innate intelligence of that patient better. And you can call it spirit, you can call it soul, you can call it biochemistry, you can call it whatever you want. So in my early years of practice, absolutely, I did mostly structural work. And yet every patient I started talking to, I started asking them questions. I was curious. So I would say the first 20 or so years of my career were mostly structural based. I got the CCSP, the Certified Chiropractic Sports Practitioner, because I was really interested in sports. Got really involved in extremity adjusting. Again, working on things. I certainly got involved in nutrition as well. But always had this little thing that was in the background. And then, as we all know, somewhere in the mid to late 90s was when the first inkling of research came out that brains are neuroplastic. When I went to school, I don't think when you went, but when I went to school, I was taught that the brain you had once you turned 24, 25 was the brain you had when you died, minus, loss of neurons. Remember, through either alcohol or drugs or whatever. And then suddenly it comes out that we're neuroplastic. And it's like, uh-oh. Complete game changer, 100% a game changer. And of course, now we all know that to be true, and we all take it as it's how it is. But you have to remember, paradigm shifts are really interesting because you've got all this data that you absolutely believe is true. And all of a sudden somebody comes along and goes, And so beginning then, which again was in the mid to late 90s, as I read all that stuff and I just knew that to be true, how do I take advantage of that? And so I would say for the last 20 years, what I've been increasingly is, how can we take advantage of the fact that human brains are neuroplastic and human beings have agency over their own brains? People are victim to their brains. Oh, I'm wired that way. Sure. But you can change your wiring? Really? Oh, yeah. And so that's been my career. Of course, started out structural, dove into nutrition and lasers and but always had that background of there's something going on up here and in people's hearts too, their emotional realm. And so certainly in the last 10 to 12 years, I would say maybe 25% of what I do in my office is chiropractic. The rest is all biopsychological is the work I do now.
Awesome.
Wow, that was long-winded. Hope that was okay.
No, was it? It was perfect. And that being said, I also want to stress that, with the new research that has come out, and I don't know if what you said, if I'm older than you think I am or younger, but yeah, since the neuroplasticity really started hitting in the mid-90s, I did make it to chiropractic school in the mid-90s, 96 specifically. So it was out there. And even when I hear those things in the clinical world, a common theme of the Brain Body Fit podcast is, my background in elite strength and fitness trading. So always, I know what they were teaching in school before, to the point, even my university professors, like they were only into cardio. They weren't into strength training, and I had no interest in cardio, and I was only interested in strength training.
Dude, we are so different.
Well, it is in that aspect, but we're interested in physiology, and make no mistake, 100%. I'm interested in aerobic physiology and distance. 100%. I'm interested in that because I love being a strength coach. I don't care what your goals are. Like, I love bringing the best out of humans. Now, I do lean definitely towards the anaerobic, the explosive. I love building monsters and distance. Anyway, but that being said, so as it's coming out, I remember, just being in college, and like literally they would teach that senior citizens, whatever your term is, let's say 65 and above, like they can't put on muscle. And I'm like, well, what's your proof of that? They go, well, that's what research says. I go, yeah, but that's not what real world says. I go, just look at like being in strength and fitness, you just randomly come across, or you yourself. I mean, how many people are total disasters in mid 60s, 70s, and then they finally just start working out. And you just see this giant transformation. So that never made sense to me. So the whole, it's cutting edge neuroplasticity, I'm like, well, you came out with a different definition. You didn't make anything. It's always been like this, but just a different mindset. But yeah, so from the clinical standpoint, I want people to realize too, where this even started. It's probably a lot earlier than people realize. There is so much experience with this topic, and you and I would both admit, as we do get into later in this podcast with the psilocybin and the mental health, oh my gosh, this is thousands of years old. And it just really got buried for a while. It's never gone away. People have always known about these health benefits, but it is really nice to see the integration of people with real professional degrees along with the true healers, which I'm always going to say probably the true healers are more important. But if you want it to be better understood, less demonized, you have to have both parties as far as the researchers, the traditional professional degrees, as well as the real healers. And it's been around long enough that we do live in that day and age if you know where to get the information. And so as we're going to share your experience of how you got here with this. And I know this is going to reinforce some of our earlier podcasts and kind of help people understand there is so much information out there and there is help for people that want this. Another thing is that structure, when people say, oh, I just do structure, and it's never I just do structure. But like another thing the listeners may not know if they're consumers, of course the chiropractors know this, but how effective structural correction is on the neuroplasticity of the nervous system and the brain. So a healthier structural, more vital system is also going to have a higher predisposition and outcome of better mental health, even if you have mental health issues. So it's not rare. People get adjusted and their mental health issues greatly improve. You're always going to get the miracles where it's like, poof, it's gone. We're not here to sell miracles. You're going to see them whether you want to or not. But it is just that aspect of making changes consistently. That's not a surprise. And of course, the strength and fitness world, exercise and diet and exercise is truly one of the best medicines in the entire world. But this episode is brought to you by Life-Based Professional Healthy Eating Systems. We all know intuitively that the food we eat affects our shape, our health, and our performance. But every day we're inundated with new quick fix diets or gimmicks that claim magic promises and for most failed results. Nutrition really shouldn't be this confusing. LifeBase is the solution that promotes eating real food and optimizing your individual needs without fads, gimmicks, overhyped supplements, or fake prepackaged foods. LifeBase Solutions is a complete system helping anyone know what to eat, when to eat, and how much to eat. The LifeBase system offers medical-grade body composition, client education, and state-of-the-art data analytics to optimize your individual needs and achieve maximum outcomes, complete with live coaching from a credentialed professional with experience. Go to lifebasedsolutions.com to learn more and contact directly. Whether you are a client looking for coaching or you want to start your own life-based professional business, eat better, look better, and feel better. lifebasedsolutions.com. We are here to stay in the chiropractic triad and progress our ways forward. And so it's great to hear, what you've done yourself and moving into this direction. Now,
can I add one thing to what you just said? Because I say this all the time to patients. I go, you're a three-dimensional, simplistically said being. You have a body, you have a mind, and you have an emotional realm. You cannot affect one of those without affecting the other two. As chiropractors, we mostly work, we work with the body. And of course it has an effect on mental health and emotional health. I have plenty of patients who are psychotherapists, and they talk to their patients who have got depression or various PTSD or whatever, and they're having physical problems. They help their physical problems because they helped deal with their mental or emotional problems. That's why I think as chiropractors, we're still the number one natural health profession. I don't know if that's true, because I really don't know about China and India and Ayurvedic and but certainly in the Western world, we can say that we have the opportunity to dig in. You did an emotional release work for years. You saw all these interconnection of mind, emotion. By the way, isn't it interesting we call it mind body? Why do we skip emotion? We should call it mind, emotion, body. I don't say mind, body anymore, because I think it's skipping this amazingly powerful emotional realm. Anyways, I just wanted to agree.
No, it's important. The brain is anatomically in the skull, but the mind is in every cell of the body, every 100%. System of the body. And even if you get into the energy fields, which exist, that's not even woo-woo. You can measure those things. And those things they hold memories. Just, as we do in the technology world, energy can hold memories and data. And pretty similar, even though we're a lot more complex yet at this point. But so we know structure is, and I always emphasize, like, structural healing is a martial art, and there's white belts and there's black belts and there's 10th degree black belts. And I think all of us, no matter how we integrate, at our offices, it's like to just keep pushing your structural skills, I think is always so important, because it does bleed off. You're only 1 degree of separation from so many other things to help and improve. And then where other things plateau, even if you don't think it's related structural, we have access and in many instances, a lot of experience to either do it directly ourselves if we have a multi-dimensional office that doesn't even have to be multi-degrees, but we also see more and more multi-degree offices that actually amplify the natural healthcare procedures that people can do. It's way, way less of drugs, medication, surgery, especially get to people sooner. But as we peel into this mental health part of it, why don't you share your story of how, the success you had, again, really being involved with elite athletes. You yourself have always walked it, super fit yourself. But where did that, I know you were always interested in the mind, but when we start getting in, we probably also share a common thread before we get into the shamanic healing and the medicines. You did some neuroemotional releases as well. That would be, how many years did you do that before you made
I don't remember when I took the first, whatever it was even called. Actually, I actually do remember. Remember John Sarno's book he wrote in the 80s?
I don't remember that one.
Okay, so Sarno was I think he was an orthopedic surgeon. He might have just been an orthopedist. He wrote the book Better Back, or whatever it is. And so somewhere in the mid 80s, he said, cut and dried, all lower back pain is emotional. Just done. As you can imagine.
And he was a traditional medical doctor, or? He
was a traditional orthopedist.
Okay, right.
And people went crazy. And so he created this thing called emotional freedom technique.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember I read that book, and all my buddies, my chiropractic buddies, were, what crap, rah, 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 rah. And I was like, dudes, I think he might have something here. I don't know that I would say all lower back pain is emotional, but everybody I ever had in my office who had lower back pain had an associated emotion, chicken or egg. And so I would say I actually started in the mid 80s when Sarno's book came out. And then I can't remember who created NET. I can't remember.
Scott Walker.
Yeah. So I did that whenever one of the early days that it came out. And then there were other techniques I did too. So seriously, very early on in my career, I did emotional freedom technique from Sarno's work. In the 80s.
I had a powerlifting coach who was, just really big into mental training as well, who taught us in the first year of him teaching us techniques and principles, that every big lift was always rehearsed in your head, probably hundreds and thousands of times before you ever achieve it in real life. So it was always that mental training was a big part, and I used it, and you could feel the difference, which led me into, hypnosis was always very mysterious, but you did the best you could, but then you at least had neuro-linguistic programming that was very accessible, the power of the subconscious mind type of books, the power of positive thinking, those things were out there already, and it just made sense. So I was so fascinated by strength and fitness, and then at that time, what chiropractic did so uniquely that was not in strength and fitness. This episode is brought to you by PerformancePractic TV. All types of practitioners and patients who want to know more about natural healthcare love to subscribe to PerformancePractic TV. PPTV is a cost-effective, password-protected, online, extensive library of training videos for clinicians and staff, as well as general consumers looking for direction and solutions to help themselves that can be watched from anywhere on your favorite Wi-Fi device. Education and training include Dr. Jerome's 3D brain-body mapping exam and correction system. This involves identifying multidimensional asymmetries through a comprehensive approach. Once the imbalances are identified, extensive hours of various proven corrective methods are the focus, including the research, physiological mechanisms, along with hands-on instruction, including regenerative cold laser therapy, adjustments, soft tissue, when to use orthotics, pulsed electromagnetic frequency, whole body synchronous vibration, corrective clinical exercises for general consumers and competitors, as well as detailed nutrition and healthy eating to optimize your metabolism for healing or performance. understanding the physiology and application of guaranteed healthy weight loss, muscle gain, and strength improvements for the look and quality of life outcomes you desire. In addition, there are numerous lab testing examples that apply to having more energy, hormone balance, immune enhancement, correcting digestion, brain health, understanding mechanisms and solutions to become pain-free, toes to nose, and discussing the limitless science and integrative protocols of anti-aging, including peptides, cell therapy, exosomes, and more. New content is added regularly. As long as you are subscribed, you continue to access all the materials. Subscribe today at watch.performancepractic.com. And it was just fascinating how these worlds were taught so separate, but you just knew they were so integrated. Totally. And so the mental emotional was always a really important part of mine, even at age 15, 16, just starting to train seriously with the competition drive. And that it was. So I got involved in any, so being aware of applied kinesiology and TBM, which is a couple of the techniques that they used growing up in the office, I knew there was a mental emotional component. Once I went to chiropractic school, started learning, I mean, it was okay. It was an icebreaker. You knew there was a lot more than how they were doing it. But then, yeah, when Scott Walker, I got first introduced to him, probably in 97, his work, and that blew me away. You know, number one, I had an amazing experience that contributed specifically to my life goals and lifting. It was very, very profound. But on top of that, it really correlated like a whole nother layer. Everything that I learned in books about the subconscious mind, neuroplasticity, the neuropeptides. Candace Pert didn't win her Nobel Prize yet for identifying neuropeptides and that mind-body connection, but it was all just right there, you know? So it was just such an aha moment for me, and I knew it was something really special, and it's always been special. And, you know, to this day, go ahead.
No, I just want to interrupt you for a second, just because I don't want to forget this. One of my very early, and it ties back to sports, my early questions around the role that mental plays in physical attributes was the first time I saw a baseball player have the yips.
Yeah.
Right? I remember watching a baseball game and the announcer saying, uh-oh, there it goes again. And the catcher couldn't throw back to the pitcher. And then I saw it again something happened. And then internet didn't exist, but golfers get the yips, baseball players get the yips. It is 100% mental.
And how it affects the physical,
right?
You know.
And the only way they could fix it, they couldn't train harder. They had to see a sports psychologist, and that got me back along the way, going, huh? But you know how that goes in life. You see these little things, and it makes you go, huh? And then you start thinking. Yeah, so that's the thing. That was one of my early ones.
And it is. And you have such an advantage of being an observer where you see something and then you try to understand it, rather than people who just start reading a book and then they think they understand it with no experience. It's like, you know, you're missing.
100%. And you would agree with this too. Any sport on the planet, the superstars, every superstar, one of their major attributes is always what? Mental strength. Yeah. What is that? And if that's good enough for superstars, it's good enough for us. Yeah. And so, like you, I started taking a dive into sports psychology because I'm like, well, if they got it figured out in the sports world, what if somebody wants to be a better whatever their life is? Let's teach them some of that. So I took a dive into sports psychology back along the way, mainly because of superstars.
Yes, absolutely. And it is. It's always fascinating. I mean, that invisible human component is one of the most impressive things to study. Even though nutrition's fascinating, I love it, and structure is fascinating, and I love it. But you get into that mental, emotional part, and gosh, it's just such a difference maker that you can't even measure it. You know, whether it's health, whether it's performance, whether it's success in life, it's happiness, it's attractor patterns, good, bad, or otherwise, and it affects us all. So now moving forward, both of us, we've got a lot of physical experience as consumers as well as professionals. You know, we understand the nutrition part, live it, teach it, and even some of the mental, emotional things coming from, the natural healthcare world, which is not medicinal influenced. So how was your experience then moving forward to psilocybin? Of course, hearing about it, but like really then participating personally or seeing other people get benefits from it?
So I live in Boulder, Colorado. So right away, we were a hippie town for the longest time. It still had some of that flavor when I moved here 25 years ago. Now a lot of that's gone. But there's Colorado's was the first state to legalize marijuana use. I think Oregon decriminalized it, Colorado legalized it. But anyways, somewhere around 9 or 10 years ago, I started reading some, very small reports that the VA and a couple other organizations were starting to look into psychedelics again, because everything had been shut down during the Nixon administration, because there's nothing for PTSD. There's nothing pharmaceutical. Psychotherapy wasn't doing very well. It just wasn't working for these veterans. And so a little bit of data was starting to filter out that the powers that be, are very quietly looking into mostly psilocybin at that point. Living in Boulder, Colorado, I was aware that people have been doing ayahuasca quite a bit, MDMA, ecstasy, bufo. There's various other psychedelics that were around here, very much in the subculture. And so when I started reading about it, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I started reading more about it. And then Brown University and Stanford, and the whole story. Mm-hmm. And so after a couple of years of reading it, I'm a curious guy. And I finally said, I want to see what this is all about. And if there's something to it, by the way, welcome to chiropractors. We will try anything, almost. That's just how we are, which is one of the beauties of our profession. We'll try anything. And so I found, I started quietly asking around, because it was still kind of on the down low, even 8 or so years ago. And I found somebody, and I met him, and I trusted him. And so he took me on a psychedelic journey using psilocybin. And it was remarkable. My own very quick personal experience, one of the things that drove it was, you mentioned earlier, I wrote a book. So I got stuck. I don't know if I had writer's block, but I just couldn't make myself sit down and write. And what was in the way was I had a really big, heavy should. I'd had people say to me for so long, you should write a book, you should write a book, you should talk, you should da-da-da-da. And I hate should, right? There it is. That's the book. And so I couldn't get beyond the should. And so when I worked with this man, this shaman, he asked me, what do you want to work on? And I said, I want to work on my should. So super long story, really short. What psychedelics do is they relax. We've got these really firmly held beliefs about ourselves, about our world, about everything. It's how we work. And what the psychedelics do is they relax it. Done properly, they relax it. If you want to blow them apart, you can do that. That's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother conversation. I'm just going to leave it there. I've done it.
We may get into that, but I think it's important to stair step it. There's microdosing, exactly. There's medium dosing, there's hallucinogenic 100%. Healing trips, and those types of things. So again, we want to make that distinction. But yeah, let's just start, like I said, on the very tame version and self-experience, and again, how you didn't just jump into it and blow it out of the water. Probably. Right. I don't even recommend most situations do that. But yeah.
Here's a fun question, and just a quick sidetrack. When I talk to people about psychedelics and I ask them, have you ever done it before? Oftentimes what they'll say to me is, yeah, I had a really bad or hard experience. So I like to be playful, unless then I won't do this. But most of the time I'll say to that person who had a bad experience years ago, I'll say, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to answer the question for you, and I'm going to be right. You ready? And they always laugh. I say, so the question is, how much did you take? And here's the answer. I don't know, but it was a lot. I'm right, aren't I? And they went, how'd you know? And I go, because that's how it was back in the day. Somebody just said, here, take this. And if you take too much, it blows you apart. And unless you're really used to it, you're not going to have a good experience. So I had my own experiences, and I gradually worked my way up to a really high dose. But what I saw from my own experience was some of those really held beliefs relaxed. One of them was a held belief around should. Another one was a held belief around training. I'm a cyclist. And then another one was I had hurt my knee, and I'd done chiropractic, acupuncture, laser therapy, a bunch of other stuff, and it was like 85% better. And this was a couple of years old, so it was chronic. And I could run on it, I could do anything I wanted, but it was always there in the background a little bit. So I went into one of those psychedelic journeys with my intention, I want to see, what am I not seeing about my knee pain? And so again, it's a long story, but after the journey, when I looked at some of the way my knee pain had tied to some emotional stuff that I had going on and some thoughts around what's true healing, my knee pain was gone. And so why? Because we know that chronic pain lives in your brain. You might have a little inflammation still, but the majority of it's up here. And there's two things in your skull. There's your brain and there's you. You want to change your brain, you got to change you. And if you want to change you, that means who you are, who you believe yourself to be. You're going to have to relax a few of those. Psychedelics are sort of I don't like the word shortcut because I don't believe it's a shortcut. I think psychedelics are an amazing tool that's been around for a millennium that doesn't shortcut anything. It's a tool that got demonized. And so now we say it, people will say it's faster than psychotherapy. I don't know. I don't want to take that on. I think psychotherapy is incredibly valuable. And we have this tool available to us now called psychedelics, that if you're doing psychotherapy, add it. That'd be like doing chiropractic and not adding on strength training, or doing chiropractic and not adding on nutrition. Well, why not add on psychedelics? Done properly, carefully, et cetera, et cetera. So you doing okay with all this?
This is great. Yeah, because it's important that people understand different backgrounds of how people come here, different reasons why people use this. And, even if they've read a lot of things, it's always more three-dimensional and even four-dimensional than just some simple paper that you wrote. And we're talking real life. And so, as we do get stuck and we do identify our personalities, there is the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. And so it's one thing if you're stuck in your conscious mind, but man, it is the subconscious mind that's running the show. And if you come from a different subculture, they may call it something else. But we know this to be factually true. And, if you're a neuro-emotional technique practitioner, like that changes your entire view of life and how God created us, as far as like, whoa, okay, that's always been there, even though people haven't even been aware of this mechanism of identifying it. And again, I think counseling is fantastic. People need it. I have patients all the time, and I always influence people. Of course, from a legal standpoint, it's like, look, I'm not a psychologist. I don't do counseling. I'm removing the physiological memory, not the memory, the physiological conditioning of the memory. Right. And in a very short time, they realize what you're saying, because the physical changes are so profound. The experience is so profound. It's a very unique experience without any psychedelics of any kind. I mean, you're just using simple agents, and not even, it's just you, the body. So I always love teaching people how magical your body is. So even now, knowing the power of psychedelics, how simple, how safe they are, how effective it is, how you can do microdosing, and you're not even going to feel anything, no buzz, no dizziness, but you still may have a healing response. And it's like, you could start so conservative, you and nobody else will even realize, in many cases, just with a microdose, but you may notice at a very short time that you're like, wow, okay, I am doing better. And and all of the above, but it's also very integrated. I always love, I'm a distributor for stem cells. People could say, well, that's not in your scope of practice. I can't inject stem cells, but I should know about them. I should be able to help people when I do. And I have so much experience personally in helping other people with stem cells. It's like, no, I offer the absolute best stem cells I know of in the United States for people. And it's like, I can't say that about other things, even though I've tried a lot of things. So not to put other things down. And, psychedelics is the same way. I definitely start with the gut-brain connection, having people eat better, structural care. We do so much triad of health, including mental, emotional is a big part of our practice. but it's all for outcomes. And then if you get that foundation, and I don't care if you get that foundation in a week or it takes a month, or maybe you're a slow lifestyle changer and it takes you 6 months to, make some things that I'm like, okay, at least you're trying, and you're not eating 6 donuts every day for breakfast anymore. That's going to affect anybody's mental health, but then having it available. It's not legal for me to do this. Georgia doesn't have those laws, but just knowing where people can go for this, it's really profound. And yeah, I myself, I've never had some big, huge crisis, but I always learn from other people. And I would describe it too, we all get in funks, we all get stuck, NET, mental training, hypnosis has done so much for me. But having decades and decades of experience helping others at a very high level, whether we're competing in the world or we're trying to save your life, literally. And yeah, I've talked to people, it lowers your inhibitors, and the aha moment of kind of the cause of the problem that's tied to this mental barrier that you have is just amplified. Even if we're having a conscious thought, you may have an aha moment, but when you are under the medicine, it lowers the inhibition so you can get to these places so much faster. And then once you get there, like the amplification is just like, oh my gosh, that's it. Like it just hits you. It can be so profound.
Well, and you say it exactly. One of the things that people will say to me often when I talk to a lot of my patients, I probably talk to every patient who has chronic pain that I see. I might not say this on the first visit, but by the second visit, I've probably at least briefly said, psychedelics are available and they play a role in the treatment of chronic pain. If you're interested, we can talk more. Most of the time people say, really, that's interesting. So we usually have the conversation. But people, their largest reticence to doing psychedelics, and I hear this all the time, is they say, I don't want to lose control. And they're afraid. They've heard stories. If you do ayahuasca, you're going to purge, you're going to vomit. It's a part of the process. And if you do ayahuasca, you may also have diarrhea. You may lose control of your bowels or your bladder because it's such a physical thing. By the way, knowing going into it, it's kind of silly, but we're doctors. We're going to talk about it. We just tell people to wear adult diapers if you think that could be a problem. And if that gets in the way of your experience, it's a part of your experience. But that's not what we do with psilocybin. So what I say to people is I go, if I was a really bad practitioner, yeah, you could maybe lose control, but I'm not. I'm very aware. I'm very concerned for you. So you are not going to lose control. You're going to relax your control. And just by relaxing your control, you will profoundly get an insight into things about yourself that you've never seen in the same way. And this is why it works for PTSD, why it works for treatment-resistant depression, is, a person has a firmly held belief, this is what my depression looks like and I experience. And suddenly you relax it and you can look at it like this, or you can look at it like this. And you're coming out of it, you remember that. And you just changed you because you were this. And now you've looked at it like this. You just changed you. And now you have a different experience of your depression or your PTSD or your pain or your angst or anxiety or whatever it is. And so I think I'll just start telling you what I do with the, I created this event. I call it a light and sound metamorphosis event. So we know that lasers create neuroplastic potential. Lasers create neuroplastic potential by increasing the metabolic rate of the tissue, the neurons in the brain, right? And by the way, I differentiate between neuroplasticity and neuroplastic potential. Neuroplasticity, I nitpick about this, but I'll tell you why in a second. Neuroplasticity is the creation of, or the relaxation or the letting go of synapses. Neuroplastic potential is increasing the possibility that you will create synapses or let go of synapses. By increasing the metabolic rate of the neurons, you're increasing the neuroplastic potential. By taking psychedelics, you're increasing neuroplastic potential. Psychedelics have been shown to actually create dendrites. Dendrites are, if you've got a neuron, here's the body of the neuron, and you've got some of these spikes going off your neuron to other neurons. to tell them something. Those are called axons. But then you've also got these spikes that go into the body of the neuron, and those are called dendrites. And what happens is psychedelics create, I can't do it with my hands, another dendrite, which means that neuron can now take in more information. And so that creates neuroplastic potential. And sound also creates neuroplastic potential and has another benefit. The reason why I nitpick on this is we are a culture that from a healthcare perspective has given our agency away to everybody else. We've given our power away to the chemists who create the pharmaceuticals we take. We've given our power away to the chiropractors who adjust our spines. We've given our power away to the experts, is what I'm basically saying. And I'm all about getting it back. Pharmaceuticals are valuable when they're necessary. Chiropractors are valuable when they're necessary. All of those practitioners are necessary, but you, the person, need to have agency, and only you are neuroplastic. Everything else can help you make changes, but at the end of the day, you're the one who's neuroplastic. You have to make the changes. I can't make them for you. And so I nitpick about that because people will give their power away to the psychedelics. Oh, I took psychedelics and my depression's better. And I always say that's because you changed. The psychedelic helped, but please know you changed. Yes, I nitpick this, but Jerome, I'm all.
Yeah, I don't look at that as nitpicking. I think it's a very important, and we teach self-responsibility. And from day one, we do 100%. So many professional, detailed, healthy eating plans based upon, the specific person's situation. But metabolic health is hugely important to structural health. As well as brain health, immune health, all those things. So that's a huge foundation we do. Not everybody does it, but I don't know, at least 70%. I don't even.
I think so. Yeah. But by the way, just to finish up on light and sound. So what I do is we know that lasers create the neuroplastic potential. We know psychedelics do. We know sound does. And so if you want to do a psychedelic journey with a shaman, what a shaman will ask you to do is to set an intention. What do you want to work on? What do you want to explore? And the shamans have this beautiful saying, and they say that the medicine, they call it medicine, knows what to show you. And in my experience, having done many, 50, 60, I feel like a baby because I've only done 50 or 60 psychedelic journeys. I know people who've done, thousands, but many hundreds.
Yeah.
But that said, I have my share of experience. So I find that to be true. I've never done a psychedelic journey that I didn't come out of it and go, wow, I had this insight on X, Y, or Z that I never saw before. So I know that that's true. And so, but what you'll find if you set an intention before you do a psychedelic journey, sometimes you'll, as soon as the medicine takes over and your consciousness starts to relax, you won't remember it. And so, but you'll have other experiences. The medicine knows what to show you. So I started thinking a couple of years ago, okay, that's cool, but what if I brought some more specific intentional episodes into a psychedelic journey? So long story short, so in the Light and Sound Metamorphosis event, I fly in this gentleman from Portugal, David Chamesh, and he's a world-renowned sound practitioner. He teaches people how to play gongs and singing bowls and every instrument that's been used by indigenous people around the world, and he's an amazing practitioner. And so he plays the sound for the 6 or 7 hours while people are on a psilocybin-derived journey. But before people come to the event, I meet with everybody for usually half an hour to 45 minutes, and I ask them, what would you like to explore? And it can be anything from chronic pain to God, to their relationship with their kids, to what's next in my life. Whatever works. And I write that down. And while I'm working with them, I ask them, what would be a good way for me to cue you while you're under so that you'll work on that intention? Ask me, just say, I want to talk to my knee if it's knee pain. Or I want to ask God, how come I can't hear you? These are all legitimate things that people have told me. So once they take the substance and they put an eye shade on, because I want them to have an internal experience. Again, so often when so many people have done psychedelics, they have what I call an external experience. They go out to nature, they're at a concert, super, super beautiful. But I want you to go inside. So we give you an eye shade and you lay on this it's a Sealy Posturepedic because you're going to lay on it for 6 hours. Hey, I'm a chiropractor. I'm not just going to lay you on a yoga mat, right? And so you go inside, and usually after about 40 minutes, I'll come up to you and you're laying there, and I'll bend down and I'll whisper in your ear, hey, Jerome, you wanted to work on your knee pain. You specifically wanted to ask your knee, is it anything it wants to tell you? Here's your chance. And as soon as they do that, I'll laser their brain. And I'm lasering their prefrontal cortex and laser. You've done podcast lasers, so people know what lasers are. And then a minute later, I'll give them the same cue. And then after another minute, I just leave and I let them again go where they do. And then 15 or 20 minutes later, I'll come back and I'll say, hey, Jerome, you wanted to ask God a question. How come he's not showing up in your life, or whatever the cue you gave me? And then that will bring you from wherever you are. It brings you back. Because again, I've relaxed you, or the psilocybin has relaxed you, but it hasn't blown you out into the cosmos where you can't bring yourself back. And this was the idea that I had. And so over a 6-hour psilocybin journey, you have plenty of time for the medicine to show you what you need to see, and you can work on what you want to work on because I'm going to remind you. And the lasers just make that, while you're working on that for those 2 minutes, it gives your brain more energy. And so I do that 5 or 6 times over the course of the 5 or 6 hours, sometimes more. And then there's another laser, I don't know if you've covered this, called an FX. And it's on a stand, and it's 3 lasers. And every participant in my Light and Sound Metamorphosis events gets 10 minutes with me one-on-one. We go to a different room, just slightly away, so you can still hear the sound when David's playing the gong or the bowls. So you still have that going on in the background. And then we'll talk. And I don't give you any answers, but just I'll cue you again with one of your questions, and I'll ask you, how do you feel about that? Where do you feel in your body? Would you like more of it? Would you like less of it? All I do for 10 minutes is help you keep going down and inside and understanding. And I know, because I've done this enough times, that you will remember every instance of this afterwards. And so after it's all over, usually within the next week, you and I sit down again for an hour. And I don't interpret your experience. How could I? I don't know. But I can help you and self-interpret it. And I can help you find a way to take that experience you had and embody it. Once again, simple, NET techniques, emotional freedom techniques. Where do you feel it in your body? If it's little, can you make it bigger? On and on and on and on. And so then people always want to know, what are the results? I've never had one person do this that didn't say, oh my God, that was amazing. Even if it was only about one thing. I've had people, since I used 2 examples, one of my superstars was a guy who had 20-year chronic back pain, had a couple surgeries, blah, 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 chiropractors, orthopedists, lasers, everything. And it just wouldn't go away. And he was not in a good place. And after his Light and Sound event, his pain was gone for 3 days. And he came in a week later, and then a month later. And a month later, I said, how's it going? He said, I used to say that I'm 50% worse. He said, now I say I'm 50% better. And there's days I'm 100% better. Jerome, I didn't touch him. All I did was I cued him during that event I said, talk to your back pain, ask it some questions. Again, it's a long story. By the way, I do the same kind of work on people without psychedelics.
Yeah.
It's just the psychedelics, by relaxing those firmly held beliefs, it appears to go faster. The patient who said she wanted to talk to God and say, where are you? She said, I have an embodied sense of God that I haven't had since I was a kid. I mean, I tear up when I think about it.
Well, that's the beautiful part of being a chiropractor, and especially an integrated chiropractor. This is normal to us, and it's, as much chaos as in the world, especially when we went through a scamdemic of total idiocracy and stupidity. To be able to lead on thousands of people that are like, yeah, this too will pass, just that again affect my mental health in a positive way rather than want to curse the darkness. It's like, no, but that being said, I know so many purists out there from other professions and, just people using sound therapy, going up even to the bowls and the gongs, and
Sure.
they just do that. And,
Sure.
people can have a nice experience, obviously smell, just
Aromatherapy.
aromatherapy can be powerful. Any tea by itself is so life-changing that deserves a whole podcast in itself, and people wouldn't even believe it if I showed it to them if they weren't exposed to it. But the thing I really love about you too is I meet so many great people that really have a ton of positive things to say, and even like they do just practice kind of the straight shamanic part of this. And I think that's absolutely great. But when you really do combine, a background in NET, that is a superpower that far surpasses just working on intentions and being a good clinician. You start putting the bowls with it, people will feel an amplified effect. Like, especially whether you use muscle testing or, you're just an intuitive healer, to do those things. What you can provide, even having that internal environment, but man, sound can really amplify these benefits of what the medicine does do. Like psilocybin by itself, I don't have near the experience you have, but again, I've heard about it so much, and I asked inquisitive questions. I had no idea where in the United States you could go to get really good professional help. I was like, gosh, I'd really like to try this. It just seems so positive. So many things I hear, especially in the alpha world of people, they may have problems, but people who are really also wanting to be better. Like they're really, really pushing themselves, and they're just stuck, and they've legit tried everything. And so it was fascinating learning from all these other people, but just being such an integrated practitioner myself, I was always like, gosh, you'd think it would make more sense doing exactly what you're doing, but implementing lasers with it, because we know lasers all by themselves, there's research going on, but just even laser practitioners have so many success stories with people with mental emotional problems beyond the typical neuromusculoskeletal and wound healing, all these other things people might contribute to it. But we hear that all the time, people's mental emotional benefits through the physiology of light that is providing in that whole science. That's not a hypothesis, lots of details, with it. But so what I hear you and, out of everybody I've met, what you are doing from an integrated standpoint, there may be others that are also doing cool things, but like this is just normal to you. But normal to you is such an amplified benefit that I really want people to encourage, even if you're the world's greatest traditional shamanic healer, or any of these different components. It's like, it's really profound. You don't have to do them all at once, just on step one, phase one, but to know they're out there. And I myself have noticed a huge benefit to all the detailed work that we do through all the other healing therapies that you've mentioned, as well as, like I said, the hypnosis, the NET. The medicine changes everything. I mean, whether you do it all by yourself, I completely understand in a lot of cases you would not have to have all the different experience and applications that you and I use, because there's not a doubt in my mind, just the medicine by itself is not being exaggerated when you hear people's testimonials out there. And they're not doing the things you and I are doing, but you still get around to Dr. Kevin Reichlin and one of these types of sound light events in combination with this. And I will guarantee it's going to be a whole another great level. And if you have no experience, it's going to be an amazing, amazing first experience. And if you have a lot of experience, you're going to notice a next level positive by integrating.
You find this interesting. I love what you just said, because I was just out at Palmer. I got invited out to talk to the students based on my book and a couple other things that I do. And so what I said to the students when, because there was question and answers, and, towards the end, they said, why did you start doing all this stuff? Because I said the same thing to them. I said, 25% of what I do is classical chiropractic as I got taught it by my dad, who got taught it back along the way. People who don't know chiropractic, when my dad went to school, you adjusted one bone. You adjusted the upper cervical vertebra for every condition in the body. And holy cow, people got better, right? And so, but my dad, so I got lucky because my dad said, well, if that works, what if then he went to the sacrum, or he went to Logan for what's the technique out of Logan? Well,
Logan technique.
Yeah, which is the
sacral tuberous ligament and how it affects the pelvis, sacral dura, and innate.
And then my dad said, well, what else? And so, back to, it's in my heritage. So lasers by themselves are spectacular. Chiropractic by itself is spectacular. Psychedelics are spectacular. So they're all spectacular. Why not add them in an appropriate, in a cool, doable way? I mean, Jerome, the next thing I'm trying to wrap my head around and figure out how to do is what I'm going to call 5 senses reprogramming, which is using psychedelics with sound, hearing, taste, smell, and physical sensation. I mean, that's how data gets up to your brain through the 5 senses. Let's stimulate all 5 of them while we've relaxed the brain with the psychedelics. I'm close to having that down. I don't know what I'm going to call it, but I love what you said. If you're a practitioner or a shaman and all you do is laser, right the heck on. I mean, do it as best as you possibly can. All I would ask you is be open to people like me, like Jerome, who've decided, well, there's other things out there that work too. And so just by adding things on, of course, you're going to have better results. Of course. So that's what I told the students. I said, look, there's so many miraculous healing techniques out there. Why not learn more of them? And they're pretty open to it. By the way, young chiropractic students are a gas. They are so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I loved talking with them. That was so great.
Yeah, Chiropractic Campus is one of the most unique places on the earth.
For sure. Sorry, I probably got off topic there. But
no, that's not off topic. That's exactly on topic. It is so important to have that integration concept, and I hope one and done fixes people, and it can. Like, I am all for just traditional counseling, when somebody needs that, but everything we do in our clinic we don't sell miracles. We're not one-dimensional. It's all about teaching people, look, even if a one-dimensional healing method gets rid of your symptom, and that's what you came in here for, that's great. But we're literally here to empower you for the rest of your life, and how we educate people, how we teach people, whether you need it today. We're always pushing people 1 step, 2 steps past their comfort zone. I mean, that is the mission statement of our practice. So you are aware to help yourself above and beyond, hopefully prevent more problems than you ever have to treat or experience. But we're all going to have episodes in our life, whether we feel like we deserved them or not. But then it's also about helping other people. It's like, what, this doesn't apply to me, but it's like, wow, you're really stuck. And I think I have some information to help you, or you could at least consider this and have a conversation with this person that obviously you haven't found yourself. So I think those things are really, really important. I've never felt like I have to apologize for knowing things that aren't my stereotypical profession or not. But I think if people really dug into chiropractic, they would find out the library of professional content. And this goes for the schools. I think modern day schools have forgot a lot about how extensive the chiropractic library is, and how many amazing, remarkable healers have came and contributed from a research, an art of healing standpoint as well. And it is. We live in just such great, exciting times if you really take the gloves off, peel the cover off, and not get stuck in just boundaries of limitations we put around certain things.
Yep, 100%.
Now, by the end of this, we're going to, provide people with where they can contact you, of course, because you do have so many interesting things. We can say it more than once. We'll put a slide up at the end. But because even this, we're going to still continue. I want to talk about your book in detail, and even, come back to psilocybin of how all of it does. But there's just a lot of great information. This book is not just about psilocybin healing.
No, not at all. Very little, as a matter of fact.
Right. But that's another part, would people become familiar with you based upon your book, to know that you have this epic experience, and even you're not just talking about it, you're providing an outcome for people. And even if it's not convenient for them to come to one of your events, Just knowing that there's other things happening out there. I know just since we've talked, like we've known each other for so long. And like I said, I've had a lot of people over the years that have mentioned psilocybin and with their experience, how amazing it was. And it wasn't overly interesting to me once upon a time. I probably misstereotyped it as well. Didn't totally poo-poo it. I have a whole new appreciation for it. And I know all the miracles I've seen in my life and how consistently I can help people doing what we do already. I would never use that as an excuse to not promote this, even just all by itself. It's like, look, don't come to me for this. I just want you to know this exists out there, and it might really gravitate towards your soul and your subconscious mind that you just really feel drawn to it. And it's like, I can lead you in a direction that you can get more information and even have an experience with it where it is legal, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just pretty much Colorado and Oregon, where it's considered completely, legal, where people can have sessions and.
Yep. I'm not an expert at the law, but I will tell you that Oregon and Colorado have not only decriminalized psilocybin, but they've created programs where if you take the proper training, the state regulatory agencies have created a way for practitioners to legally use these medicines, specifically psilocybin. I will say that unfortunately, that legislation and the legislation has made it very difficult to legally 100% above board do this. As an example, somebody in Denver just opened the first psilocybin 100% legal clinic, and it's $3,500 to do one journey. And I'm sorry. I mean, as amazing as it is, that's so cost prohibitive to so many people, but that's what they're going to have to charge based on the hoops they have to jump through. And I love seeing that it's becoming mainstream. I mean, just last week, Texas just committed $50 million to ibogaine research. You know what ibogaine is?
Yeah.
It's a derivative from. Yeah. So there's a substance out of West Africa, particularly Gabon, called iboga, Iboga, and whereas with psilocybin you'll journey, you'll be in an altered state for 5 to 7 hours. Ayahuasca can be longer, 12 hours if you continue to dose it. Iboga is 24 to 30 hours, and it's the granddaddy of them all. And so, but one of the and I've been blessed to do Iboga a couple times. I really wanted to explore it, and whole nother conversation. A beautiful experience, super hard. But the chemical in Iboga is ibogaine or ibogaine, and it's been shown to be really perhaps the most useful substance for opioid addiction. And so, and as well as PTSD. So the state of Texas just agreed to spend $50 million in looking into ibogaine research, particularly for veterans. I've heard it said that psychedelic research is one of the very few, what do you call it when both sides of the politics, that has bipartisan support. One of the very few things, because we're finally starting to see the value of these remarkable substances. You asked me a question and I forgot what it was.
No, yeah, and I know I've heard RFK Jr. earlier talk about this too, that he wants it to be more open and strongly look at this, especially again, our military personnel. Especially there's a lot of people this can help, but especially those people that are exposed to such rigorous training. You're always more susceptible when you're sleep deprived to getting mental emotional disorders and having this neuroplasticity negatively being affected. And that was one of the things that turned me on the most, where you see people who are these alpha males, special forces, and even though they get exposed to a lot of traumas, but just the toughest people on the planet, mentally and arguably, physically, the combination, not just the training.
First responders.
Well, of course, I mean, it goes on. There are so many people that you kind of take for granted, but the constant stress that they're under, and make no mistake, it can be really stressful running a healthy household at home too. But when we really start seeing, and understanding the real traumas that these people have, physical traumas, seeing your buddies getting blown up and the suffering, and other people, not just getting the bad people. So with that, it was remarkable, how well these people take care of themselves. They are exercising. They've gone through years, maybe decades of counseling. They've tried the prescription drugs, to no surprise. There's a limitation to those things, maybe short-term necessities, but by far, people don't get cured, or even like, oh my gosh, I've got my life back in many instances. It's like, okay, my symptoms are better, but I live in this small box because my symptoms and side effects keep me in this smaller box. And, this is not what we're talking here. So that's the thing that really amazed me. These people who are literally eating great, they're really eating healthy. A lot of people say, I eat pretty good. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're a walking trash can, but these people that literally know, and they're doing integrated therapy, and they're just so stuck. And it's not because they're a weak person, it's because they have been so traumatized, accumulated traumatizations, and their responses from this. That was fascinating. And you hear enough of these things, it's not just smoke and mirrors, especially when you then correlate that with people that you really do know. They're either clinicians doing this for other people, they're people that went to sessions themselves, and not even under those extreme situations it's being used. So it was fascinating to learn, and you just keep hearing basically the same story of positive outcomes. And definitely you can take these larger dosages that you may even be affected for 6 and 7 hours like you do. I don't have near the experience that other people do, but like I said, just starting off very conservative, just microdosing, and not even really feeling anything. If you gave me a neurovestibular test of sorts, I'd score the same. I just took that little. And then you take dosages that you could feel a little bit, and then especially with the session, you could feel a little bit of loopiness. And even I've worked up to a dose where I could say there was some hallucinogenics happening, but I could also say, like, I feel 100% sober in 2 hours. Now, generally my body can detox things pretty fast, and not bragging, I'm not hypersensitive to alcohol. I'm not hypersensitive to anything, so not a big drinker, but, back in the day at college, drank more than you did now. And, there's no doubt your tolerance was pretty decent. I'm not a hypersensitive person with that. So maybe it burns out of my body a little bit sooner, but I just really want to demystify this and take the fear away from people that it's like, oh my gosh, 6 or 7 hours. I couldn't even imagine that. Well, you can start there, and especially in an event like you, I guarantee it's probably going to go by pretty fast. And it's just going to be an amazing experience under what you're doing. Like, I would feel fine to guarantee that to people. But on the flip side also, it's like, no, you don't have to, like, if 6 or 7 hours intimidates you, it's like, no. You don't have to even consider that as your methodology with this.
Right. Yeah, there are other substances that are faster. That ketamine assisted psychotherapy is legal here in Colorado with different professional licensing. Ketamine is an hour to an hour and a half. 5-MeO DMT, you use it with a vape pen. It's 10 to 12 minutes. So there are ways to go about this in different ways. And by the way, if you're in an altered state for 6 to 7 hours, that's a value. Time is a quality all of its own. So, have a 10-minute experience, though, having done the 5-MeO DMT. The first time I did it playfully, I came out of it and I asked the person who was doing it with me, I said, how long was that in Earth minutes? And she said 10 minutes. And I said, oh my God, I was gone for days. Yeah. And so again, when you relax this state, and yet 10 minutes later, I could drive home. I was 100%. So there are different ways to do this. But again, I think the improper way to do it, and I don't think it's just improper, I think it's cruel, is to give somebody a big dose right away. I mean, I'm sorry. That's not an appropriate therapeutic way of approaching things. As a chiropractor, if you present to me and you've got neck pain and back pain and shoulder pain and ankle pain and elbow pain, I'm going to work you into it over the course of a couple visits. Let's work on your back first. Which one's the most important to you? Every healthcare practitioner will tell you that people will sometimes have, there's all kinds of names for the reactions when you do too much, too soon, too fast. And so I care about that. So that's why we do a moderate dose when we do the light and sound metamorphosis event. And that's one of the things I talk with people about for that 30 to 45 minutes beforehand is what to expect. And also I screen people. If you have severe PTSD, I'm not the one to work with you. I have other people in my network that I'll refer you to because that's not appropriate in a large group setting. If you have a history of psychosis or dissociation, it's not appropriate for me to work with you.
Especially in first experience. I mean, if they did have some one-on-one experiences, group healing as we know, but yeah, completely. It's like, no, we got to work you into that if that's appropriate for you, and that'll be their decision. Like they'll know. Right.
I just always want to. It's so important to say that. You take too much aspirin, you'll die. You get adjusted properly, you'll have a reaction. I don't know if you'll die, but you'll have a reaction. You take too much blood pressure medication, you'll die. You take too much psilocybin, you won't die, but you will have a horrible experience because your ego will die, and that is not pleasant.
And some people have unfortunate experience because they took too much, and then
took too much.
50% of those people, you dig a little bit deeper. Well, I was in high school or I was in college and we were drinking at the same time. And I'm like, okay, we're not comparing apples to apples here. It's like
no, and that's exactly it. And that's why the work that when I do it, and the same thing with people who do psychedelic assisted therapy. I'm lucky that my wife is a psychologist and she does psychedelic assisted therapy. So she and I compare notes all the time, and she works with me with the light and sound event. It's all about, we want you to be present with your altered consciousness, with your relaxed consciousness, so you can drive your experience. That's how you make permanent change.
Absolutely. Well, that is fantastic what you have developed. You and your wife sharing two different professional degrees, same lifestyle, house, but really sharing that with people. And that's what we want, whether you're married to the significant other who provides unique complementary things, or we build a team of people at a community, or you're flying a guy in from Portugal, you said, even just because it adds to the experience.
100%.
Now, we'll come back to the mental emotional part too, even with psilocybin, but let's touch base with your book. You have a tremendous amount of experience, so it's always fantastic when people end up writing a book when they have so many decades of experience that you've had prior to writing it. But let's talk about this specifically. Your pain is a superpower. Learn how to use it wisely.
So everybody I've known in my life, myself included, everybody I know who's been through something painful, be it physical, mental, or emotional, and who's come through the other side of it, has learned from it. I'm not advocating for people to be in pain. I occasionally get some pushback. People say, well, that's a horrible title. Pain sucks. And I go, if you read my book, I always say, you didn't read my book, did you? They go, no, the title. No. I'll go, if you read my book, nowhere once do I say pain is fun, playful, or whatever. But then I'll ask that person, have you ever been in pain? Did you learn from it? Even if you learned, oh, I shouldn't lift like that, or oh, I should change my diet. But what if you learned, I have to work on my triggers. I'm super reactionary, or I'm too attached to my belief system. Pain is a superpower when you learn to use it wisely. Everybody comes out the other side wiser. So that was my title. I will tell you that my working title for the longest time, and now it's chapter 1, is You're not a machine. Don't let your doctor treat you like one. As a chiropractor, we're all about biomechanics, and we tend to look very mechanistically. If you're a medical doctor, you tend to look very chemically. We're going to alter your chemistry. If you're a surgeon, it's physical again. We're going to cut you apart and sew you back together. What about you? We talked about it earlier. You have a mind, you have emotions. And if you learn how to work with those, you can so enhance. Jerome mentioned earlier, talking about stacking therapies on top. Well, if you just work with the physical, you'll get results. If you just work with the mental, you'll get results, blah, blah, blah. Tack all three, you'll get much better results. And what about the other parts? Now, why does mindfulness meditation have some success with chronic pain? Because, you've got your mind, you got your emotions, and you got your body, but then you've got that thing called meta-awareness, right? That part of you that is aware of yourself. Like I'm aware of myself talking right now. If you close your eyes and start thinking, you'll be aware of yourself thinking. That's called your meta-awareness, superconsciousness, whatever you want to call it. Pain doesn't live there. Pain doesn't live in your meta-awareness. Pain doesn't live in your superconscious, whatever you wish to call it, maybe your soul. It depends on your belief systems. So what if you could teach people to get up there above your body, your mind, and your spirit? And you can do that. And so again, all of these things caused me to go, everybody who's been in pain has kind of learned about themselves. And yet, as doctors, what's my job? To get rid of your pain. And so, wait a minute, I had this epiphany decades ago. God, I'm old when I said I actually had this epiphany decades ago.
Oh, yeah.
But it's decades ago.
Experienced, we prefer.
Yeah. What if I'm taking people's learning opportunities away? And I was 100%. And as a chiropractor, I think any healthcare practitioner can say this. If I just fix people's symptoms so they can go back and do the thing that got them in my office so that they'll come back, that's a treadmill. It's good for my bank account, 100%, but it's didn't feed my soul. What feeds my soul is insights. When I get an insight about myself, that's like glory days. It's like, oh my God, right? And it's life-changing. And so how soul feeding is it for me when I help somebody else have an insight? And those insights are, why do I keep hurting myself? Why do I stay in pain? How come I'm triggered? Da 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 da. And so I don't tell people to rush away from their pain. I ask all kinds of questions in my office. Here's one of my favorite ones. So if I help you get better, what are you going to do with your newfound body? You're going to go back and be the same person you were? Because that's just going to bring you back in my office. And you see people, the wheels start turning and they go, huh. And I go, I'm not saying you're wrong and bad for doing that. You're still a really nice person. But if you really want to take advantage of the work you and I can do together, let's bump you up a step. And my job is to get you to the point where you don't need me. Jerome, I always use I like the analogy of a rowboat. I say when somebody comes to me with a condition, we both get in a boat and I grab both the oars. But as fast as I can, I want you to grab one of the oars with me, and then I want to get out of the boat. You can go sailing. The analogy falls short. So I wrote the book. It's not a research book. It's a book to help you understand who and what you are. And there's so many ways that you can look at yourself. You can look through dream analysis. You can look through Jungian archetypal. I write about that. And since we're talking about my book, one of my favorite things is the very last chapter is entitled IQ plus EQ equals WQ. So we know what IQ is, intelligence quotient, and that's pretty set in stone. Your IQ will bump up and down a little bit, and you can gain a little bit here and there, but it's pretty fixed. EQ, your emotional intelligence, or how well you can empathize and connect with other people, is hugely malleable. And so that's EQ. And WQ is a term I created, and it's called wisdom quotient. And through a life long lived of knowledge and connecting with other people, the world, spirit, whatever, you just keep adding to your wisdom. And so if you want to consciously add to your wisdom, you can't do much with your EQ, but you can do a lot with your ability to connect or empathize with the world you live in. And so I love saying that, because here, Jerome and I, our health, Let me do it this way. Health care providers. So health is the knowledge, anatomy, physiology, pathology, treatment plans, etc. That's IQ. Care is empathy. That's EQ. I say to people all the time, would you rather be treated or cared for? I'd rather be cared for. I say this to all the doctors I run into. If you want to be a little bit, you want to, confront yourself a little bit, most doctors will give you a treatment plan. They'll do an assessment, they'll do an examination, and they'll say, here's how I want to treat you. I throw this challenge out. I say this to your patients. Here's how I want to care for you. You think patients don't love hearing that? I love
even if you don't explain it. I mean, it has
even if you don't explain it. But here's the kicker for doctors that can be challenging. When I care for somebody and they don't get better, it hurts. I'm not kidding. It's not fun because now I care for you and it didn't work. I will say the advantage of that is that hurt drives me more to find out what else can I do to help you. I know that I will never know it all, and I know that I will never cure or help 100%, but I do know that 100% of the people that I see that don't get better, I'm learning from them because that hurts. That's my pain. That's my biggest pain these days is when something doesn't work, I'm going to learn because it didn't work. And that gains to my wisdom. We are health, IQ, care, EQ, professionals. We offer wisdom. So, sorry, that's a bit of a rant.
No, it's not. It's always appropriate because it is. We really want people to understand, the brain-body connection, so many people contribute so many great things to it. One thing about brain-body fit and the brain-body fit technique, we don't want to put boundaries around it. So many people who are even living people and they created something amazing and it's successful. They have other people learning their system. And part of it, I get it, but it's like they literally draw hard boundaries around it. Even when those people are alive, it's like, no, we're never doing that. Like, this is it. And this is all you need. And when they say that, I get it. Not everybody wants to do physical, chemical, emotional.
For sure.
And I get all that, but there is too many boundaries put around people that the diagnosis only applies because of the specialist that they went to see. And it mind boggles me how many people completely force people into these clinical boxes rather than say, and we could go on and on, whether you're a surgeon, whether you're a traditional psychotherapist where you're just talking it out, whether you're just a legalized drug dealer and it's all prescription therapy. Like, I get it if that's the majority of what you do, but when somebody asks you a question, I always tell people, it's like 10% of your practice guarantees once more than you're doing. They are doing more than you're doing. Like, they are looking for integrated answers. And when people come to me and they give me the long list of people that they've seen, and I do like the basics of physical, chemical, and emotional, or even just two of the three, or even one of the three, and the person tells me their life has changed, their symptoms are gone in like 1 to 3 visits, you sit there and go, well, what was this other person doing? And this is not exceptions. Like, this is minimum over half my practice, Right. And it just blows me away that I don't know if you call it ego, if you just call it you're not reading.
Well, Jerome, think of it this way.
So unaware, I know what everybody does is valuable, and I don't want to discredit that. But in terms of when you don't get those people who, and some people just don't want to get better, like it's their identity. So as clinicians, we all understand that. That's not to offend anybody. Clinicians get that, but we also don't want to use that as an excuse and say, it's always the patient's fault because they just don't want to get better. At times, it's like, wow, what would help this person more?
Two things. One, I truly have experienced, I believe, and I've experienced, everybody has a doorway in. Everybody has a doorway to connection. Even those who don't want to get better, they have a door, and it's my job to find the door.
Absolutely.
People ask me, what are my failures? At the end of the day, my failures are I couldn't find the door. And because that's it. Once I connect with somebody, we've connected and we can do something. But the other one, to your point, is at least a couple times a month, I have a patient who'll come in who's been through that long list. And what they'll say to me is, the doctor told me there's nothing more that can be done for me. And of course, they're devastated. And what I say to them is, and sometimes I'll say it feisty, and sometimes I say it nice, but I'll say, what that doctor should have said to you was, there's nothing more I can do for you. But that doesn't mean there's nothing that can be done. But there's nothing more that the medical system or that doctor, but his ego or her ego and the system's ego is so big, or they've got such blinders on, that if they can't help you, nobody can help you. And that's BS. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's so many things out there, and boy, do I never want to be that way. And I'm not that way.
Well, you're not. You're not even capable of being that way. You would have to have a massive head injury in order to change that component of you. Like, once you have common sense and you have consciousness, you're just not going to turn into the village idiot overnight.
It's true. It's true. It's true. Hey, Jerome, I have to go pretty soon here. I'm so sorry to call time, because this is just the best. This is so much fun. I love hearing you.
Well, we have such a wide range of experiences at a gig, but what you're doing is truly so cutting edge, helping people in this mental emotional realm. And I love it because you have all this similar background. And even some places, like, I can't even emphasize what a big deal like some of these emotional release techniques are. And I would never say one emotional release technique is better than the other. I think it matters whose hands it's in, without a doubt. Who's the healer. There's techniques out there that when I watch certain people do it, I'm fascinated, and I'm like, well, it doesn't work that way when I do it. But then on the flip side, it's like when they say, oh, I've tried this, and this, and it's like, yeah, but you haven't had me do this method on you. And not toot my own horn, but I just work really hard. I mean, so what you're great at, what you're good at, what you're not good at. Yep. And you should step up and be confident when people are in need in terms of selling yourself. But with that, we'll probably do this again, just because, like I said, we've known each other a long time. You've got so much experience. As much experience as you have, you're still incredibly young, vibrant, because you've taken such great care of yourself, and how you are putting these things together, which benefit your health and well-being and purpose in life, but ultimately how it helps other people. So really exciting. We will make how do you want people to contact you? Like a website? Obviously, we're not going to give your phone number out at this point, but also so people can learn more about your sessions. And then once they walk through this, like, wow, even what we recently talked about, like, I shared a newsletter with you that was very new to me. I was blown away. Like, somebody just recently put on an online seminar, and these are mostly MD, PhD psychologists. Like, and there was over 600 speakers of professional licensure. And it was like, wow, to think these events are working at that, and so few people, truthfully kind of know the magnitude of the legitimacy that's behind this. So,
so people, I don't want to forget to say this to all of you out there. So my first memory of meeting Jerome was he was teaching a laser class, because he has written these remarkable clinician books that have to do with different laser frequencies for different conditions. This man, I'm pointing here because he's over there, this man is gifted in that way. And so I first heard him speak, and I followed him somewhere else. Like, within a year, he didn't come to my town, but I'm like, I got to go hear this guy talk some more. He's amazing. So Jerome, thank you for who you are and what you do. You've taught me, and I'm so grateful for that. People can go to my website, kevinreichlin.com, KevinReichlin.com. And from there, there's got a lot of what I do. There's some articles that I've written over time, etc. My personal email, which I'm actually okay to share, is kevinreichlindc@gmail.com. I always ask people, please be judicious. If you use my email, please don't get me on any other spam lists. Whatever. I have to change it every few years because it gets a little bit crazy. You know how that goes. Yeah. But I am so accessible. Every single one of my patients gets my home phone number and my personal email. I am accessible. If you're going to come to me for care, you need to be able to get hold of me. So I get personal phone calls every day. I get emails every day, texts from folks who come to see me. So you're welcome to contact me. I love communicating with folks, connecting.
Absolutely. And then do you post some of these Sound and Light seminars, or that's just specific private only, selective of how you build a relationship over time with people?
Yeah, I don't, just because of the I guess I'll use the word legality. Again, it's not illegal, but it's not 100% covered either. So I'm a little careful with it.
Selective.
I'm selective with it. I mean, I don't mind if people know I'm doing it, but I tell everybody, please know after I meet you that I may say to you, this isn't your thing, but then I'll have some other suggestions for you. So I certainly never post it. I don't take videos during it. No, absolutely not. It's 100% private.
Yeah,
In that sense.
right. But yeah, people can contact you, ask you
100%.
certain questions, and
Totally.
even if it doesn't align with what you're doing, like I said, we've had some really neat conversations, kind of opening both our eyes to, even with all the experience you have, people that I've met that I trust, they taught me about this. But like I said, I was pretty amazed as we recently kind of shared with each other. It's like, oh my gosh, are you aware of this? And you were like, no, I'm not. And I go, yeah, it's amazing the magnitude of this and how professional and organized and the amount of content and the amount of speakers. So it was absolutely amazing. But it's also amazing to have somebody like you, because even out of all those 600 people, I guarantee there is nobody like you in doing what you do, especially stacking these very valuable things together and creating that amazing environment, amazing experience. So Dr. Kevin, thank you so much for being on the Brain Body Fit podcast. You've been a great friend all these years, a great colleague to refer to, and we'll continue to do that. So
thank you, Jerome. It's been a complete pleasure. Love doing this. Love you for doing what you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody out there. You have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening to the Brain Body Fit podcast. Thank you for listening to the Brain Body Fit podcast, where we are dedicated to helping doctors and clients integrate clinical evaluation and performance enhancement. Please like and share this episode with someone who wants to empower their own health and actively participate in the health revolution of the growing millions. Epic changes are real. Visit us at PerformancePractic.com, where you can explore premium selected products and services that we have used to change the lives of thousands in our clinic and seminars for decades. Follow us on our socials. All the links are listed in the podcast description. If you are interested in personalized health programs and want to work directly with Dr. Jerome Rerucha, schedule a paid consultation to apply for starting a 3-month professional supervised healthy eating program. Also available are individual comprehensive restorative care program options with additional lab testing and services. Head over to PerformancePractic.com or simply click the link in the description to learn more and apply.